IVM.
Welcome to yet another episode of Simplified. Guaranteed to make you look lot smarter, but I don't know if you'll sound much smarter. You look a lot smarter, but we are working on that. Yes.
Yeah, that's why we are an audio-only podcast.
Yeah. So,
Welcome, everyone.
We should have a grooming sort of podcast, like what to wear and all, because I think the four of us, we can make a terrific negative list. So, like, don't look like Naren, don't look like Shrike, don't look like Chuck, and don't look like Tony, and you probably look really nice.
Yeah. I mean, my hair is full bird's nest. Chuck looks like a Flipkart child.
Thanks, John. That was my boyish good looks.
Tony also is. He looks like a bad version of the Virat Kohli at the back.
Having known Tony for a while,
version.
Though, I must mention that Tony's sartorial sense has improved dramatically over the last few years.
How much of it is you, and how much of it is your
all of it. I know what you're going to ask. All of it.
What? I didn't.
So in my case, I am
wife. How much of it is
comfortable with my? I have no body image issues, and my wife is absolutely horrified if I have to go somewhere.
There's a thing like too much. There's a thing like too much self-assurance also. A little bit of insecurity would help.
In my case, I walked off B school and joined like a hospitality company.
Oh.
And I was, till the day I left, I was still the shabbiest dresser, except that in my own evolution,
it was.
I started wearing like multicolored socks and all. So
yeah. When I think of
all my friends who,
when I think of
the factor of
one of the things I felt very strongly about was socks. Like, why do they have to be of the same color? No one can see them. Like, unless you, So all you have to concentrate on is socks are just to keep your feet, like the sweat of your feet from whatever damaging your shoe. And my wife says, no, they have to be not just the same color, they have to be the same pair. I mean,
so we are the podcast for good looks apparently, and not not listening. Actually, the word for listener is also auditor. So our listeners are our
auditors.
Yeah. So
very sarcastically sartorial.
Exactly. Since we are actually a satire on clothes, you can say that we are a sartire podcast.
It's tailor-made.
Tailor-made. Okay. So today I wanted to, I haven't done any of the usual deep research that we do for these topics, just so that listeners know. For each simplified episode, we spend the previous Friday doing research, speaking.
No, we do a lot of research, and maximum research is done in the very sophisticated area of profundities.
And, our research is just as real as Bitcoin mining is to real mining.
Without the returns.
So we have done a lot of deep research, and this is what our staff of like 100 people who
our writers, monkeys with typewriters.
Yeah. And here is the profundity. There is nothing called darkness. Right? It is just absence of light. Similarly, there is nothing called problem. It is just absence of idea to find solution. Good morning.
That actually makes me think, was that profound, or I don't know.
It sounds like.
Are you a part of the solution, or are you a part of the precipitate, Chuck?
Precipitate.
I used to always be very perplexed. The one thing I used to enjoy in my brief and eventful stay in the scientific field was organic chemistry, and I was always very sad because you used to work that hard an entire practical session to arrive at some weirdly colored precipitate which you would have to show the prof.
Yeah.
And like literally after the prof said and looked and said ha and put a mark, that precipitate would go down the gutter. And I'm like, mere ko precipitate bachane ka hai. This is very valuable. I spent an hour getting this.
So when I was in, I think 11th or 12th, we used to have those chemistry experiments, right, in the lab. And the most challenging science experiment was to figure out which the salt was. You know, they'll give you this thing and you have to do a series of experiments to see what it was. So that was the most challenging thing, because you get it wrong means you get it wrong. You don't get step marks or something like that, right? So you get the whole thing wrong. It's a hit or miss. And this is like a tribute to our, younger bodies and bravado. There were people who knew what each of these damn things tasted like. So they were like, so we would end up working on all of them during the sessions, right? So they would actually take the damn salt and they would lick it like, okay, barium chloride or whatever it is tastes like this. So during the exam, when they see it, they lick it and then work back.
It's like later some entrepreneurial fellow can start one Gola business and call it barium chloride Gola. This Gola is different flavor. Oh man. This is why we call them profundities. They spark such amazing conversation.
Yeah,
literally you were saying.
No, the original profundity, I think Johnny Walker had a campaign which said reality is an illusion under the absence of alcohol. So
Wow. Okay, I think we have hit a profundity
wall. We peaked early today.
Okay, today we are going to have a discussion topic, which I just thought, we were brainstorming on topics yesterday. And I had just finished teaching a batch at a university that I teach at. So I just thought we just talk about this new spate of online learning and stuff that's happening. And Tony's already laughing.
No, I want to say what the brainstorming entailed was Chuck posting on our group saying, I will come up with a topic during the course of the day. And I said, what course? And Chuck said, hey, let's do e-learning. So
oh man,
that's a fairly efficient.
The standard or the bar for determining what an episode is going like catastrophically nosediving right now.
No, but I need to share this. Like obviously, all of you are podcast veterans. I am the noob. So once Picasso was doodling apparently in a restaurant, and he finished and he crumpled up the piece of paper or whatever. And then this person who was sitting next to him went up and said, hey, you're throwing that away. Can you give it to me? And he said, sure. It cost $10,000. And she's like, why? You were just going to throw it away. And, you literally did it in 2 minutes. He said, I didn't do it in 2 minutes. It took me 60 years to get to this point. So therefore, I can understand why we don't need research at this point. We'll just go with it.
Wait, did you just paint all of us in a positive light? Yeah. No. This feels weird. This feels weird. Somebody bring us back down to earth.
Is this really hard work? Should someone be making
all
an
our
NFT of
listeners
this?
are left by this point, so some positive affirmation is okay.
Okay, fair enough. You do the positive affirmation after everyone's left. Okay.
Yeah, but bottom line is that whatever we go on ramble about will probably segue into something possibly interesting. So let's go with it.
So let's do that. Okay. So I've had a pretty interesting, I guess, 1 year or so, ever since, everyone's been working online and all that. I know Tony and Shriketh, for example, have been doing Zoom call after Zoom call or Teams calls after Teams calls, depending on your platform of choice. I have actually been conducting a few courses, like one of my own and one for a university. It's pretty interesting as an experience, actually, to be teaching online during this time. And I've been reading a lot about, whether this is the future of education in some way. There are advantages and disadvantages to it, obviously. And I just thought that, we put it out there and see what everybody thinks about this. Before we start, though, I have to say that the first time I ever taught online was in 2011 or 2012.
Wow.
Yeah. So Micah, the university that I studied at, they had an online program like for a really long time, 2010 or 11 or something. But obviously, there was no Zoom or Google Meet and all that during that time. So I remember still going from my home. I was staying in Andheri at that time, going to a center with a
Wow.
special video setup. They had like a camera, they had a dedicated console and software. There was a team of 2 or 3 people who were there as technical assistants to help me set up and do the whole thing, answer questions that came in on a very rudimentary sort of a console. Then from that all the way then it was 2020 on Zoom directly. So
but that's insane, right? It's like way back in history. I don't know if you remember when we all used to go to a studio to record a podcast.
Oh man, yeah.
Studio.
I was talking to my wife this morning. I was like, I wonder if everything goes back to normal, which obviously is not a guarantee as such. But if everything was to reset also, I wonder if like a lot of these things would go back to the way they were, including like recording at studios. Because I mean, we've been doing the podcast now. At least some of you guys have pretty industrial strength mics and video setups and all that stuff. And with the recording stuff that's there right now, do places need to even invest in professional mic setups and stuff like that? Is that even required anymore?
Yeah.
And similarly, and connecting back to the topic, with a lot of universities being able to attract now lecturers with the setup, not just from their own city who can make it over there, but from pretty much anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
Which I did. I mean, recently I took a lecture of B school in India, which sitting out of Malaysia, and it was not that they. I mean, yes, it was on Zoom and stuff, and the rest of the class was also on Zoom. But the fact that they now are reaching out to people working across the world, and because you can, the Zoom call is the same whether it's from Malaysia, like the US, or Ghaziabad. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you ended there. Okay.
I just went on a tangent, but go on. Yeah.
Back in the day, when I did my MBA, we used to have visiting faculty, and you had to actually take band, baja, barat to bring the visiting faculty to your place. Like, they would be really pricey, and some of them, not all, some of them were really nice. But some of them, you had to put Muscato for them to come and sort of.
Naren,
they were good.
Momento presentation.
Don't get too nostalgic, Naren. It used to happen last year, 2020. It still happened.
I think we've all been visiting faculty.
We have all of us. But yeah, it's so it's kind of interesting, right? So at one level, yes, there is no doubt it's easier than ever to get a visiting faculty. Like I did a panel discussion. I was hosting a panel discussion for Micah. I had the 3 people in mind for it. Bam, it was quite easy because everyone just needed to switch on their Zooms for an hour to do that. It would be very different if all of us were heading to Ahmedabad and I had to block out time, flights, everything, and all. But at the same time, right, you have that level of seriousness, or that sense of occasion is just not there, if that kind of makes sense, where it's just another one of the several Zoom calls over the course of the day. Like I'll draw an analogy with another thing that I am pretty passionate about, which is online concerts, for instance. When you are at a show, you are fully immersed in the show. There are no distractions. There's no possibility for distraction. But when you are like, even I have started fatiguing of online concerts because it's easy to keep the music playing and then go and read an article somewhere, or just step into the other room and do something else, or stuff like that. So I guess that sort of risk applies to even like online learning. At least that's what
I want to add a little bit here about a book that I recently read called Deep Work by a guy named Cal Newport.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
What Cal Newport says is that if you really want to put in quality work, right? So most of us, we don't need deep work. It is more like you have to manage people, or you have to manage your presence on, because not all of us need to do deep work. But if you do, then you really need to disconnect from the internet and spend time with yourself. And it's not easy because we are so wired into the world that it's virtually, so your mind, disconnecting your mind is virtually impossible. So you have right now, all of us are podcasting. We've all got our phones on mute, but they're lying next to us. And if the screen glows, you are going to see what that message or that email was. And so he says none of that is okay if you want to do any deep work. And so that is the minus side of being online all the time.
Yeah, I just want to tease out a little bit of difference here. One is let's say a concert or a movie experience, which can happen indoors or in a theater or an arena, versus learning, right? And there are basically two different types of learning. As someone who has attended 4 years of engineering, then 2 years of MBA, but never paid attention in class, I can very honestly say that the things that I've mostly picked up are out of interest. So what the online space allows you to do is not be, boxed in by the structure of, university learning. You can practically go out there and learn what you want to. Therefore, the key factor here now is interest, because accessibility is no longer a challenge, right? It's not like you need to choose from a finite set of courses, which is definitely a great thing. But obviously then that means you need to have so much investment to actually learn on your own, right? As opposed to the structured way where you have certain number of credits to attain and papers to clear, where you will somehow, because of that, learn something at some point in time. So
because that also leads to, the way a lot of Indian education is structured, right? I went to Christ College in Bangalore, and there was, we had 85% attendance mandatory, right? You had to have 85% attendance or you can't sit for your exams. Now, what that led to was obviously a whole bunch of people who were there, but somewhere else in their heads, or stay out of the window or whatever else. But and conversely, in that scenario, and that's what leads me to think about a point you were saying, Tony, was there was this one prof, one of our literature profs who used to come in, and he used to literally walk in the door and say that, okay, guys, I know a whole bunch of you aren't interested to be here. I am literally going to mark attendance for every single person who wants it. I will mark your attendance, and then if you don't want to be here, please go. And I'm not going to hold anything against you. It's not like I'm being sarcastic or passive aggressive or anything. Just leave if you don't want to be here. Go out, chill, do your thing in the world. It's cool. What that did was, over a period of time, initially there were a core group of students who stayed, and pretty much a lot of them left. But over a period of time, just not mandating people to stay, slowly grew the audience. People just wanted to stay and listen. And also it correlated with the quality of the classes, because he was really good. And the fact that when you didn't feel like you were compelled to stay, people tended to pay attention a lot more. And you have felt that you had the option to tune out, but you're choosing to tune in versus being forced to tune in.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to that, what Tony said, right? It's about that self-interest and motivation rather than...
I have a different question. So those of you who do take online, you are teaching people online, do you find that you have to make an extra effort to be interesting? Because online, it's literally you can't force anybody's attention. He could be playing tic-tac-toe or whatever the people play on their computer, solitaire. And is it harder to keep people riveted to whatever you're saying?
Yeah, it obviously is, right? Because, and sorry, I think Sriket, you will also be able to add to this, right? Since you had a one-off experience yourself. And Tony, I'm not sure if you have done a training.
No, but you're the most experienced.
That's I'll start. See, the biggest challenge, I think, Naren, is you don't know what their reaction is. I'm not the type.
Body language is not visible.
It's not visible. And many of these kids choose to keep their camera off. And I don't want to force them to put the camera on, because they may not be either comfortable doing that, or sure, some of them will just come there and they will leave the classroom and all that. But for a few bad actors, I don't want to mandate a rule where everybody who's uncomfortable needs to switch their camera on. So you can't gauge beyond a point, and in that sense, you do need to make an effort to keep things interesting. And it's I'm just trying to compare compare what I just finished teaching versus the same course when I used to deliver it physically, there are some differences. You do try to add more multimedia, you add more, you optimize for your face and body language less and more, drama coming through the slide and stuff like that. So yeah, in that sense, and you try to do a few online activities where the students get together in breakout rooms on Zoom and do stuff and all that. But yeah, you do have to make an effort more. I think it's about being conscious of the medium that you're doing, what works best, or that if you need to convey a piece of gyan, maybe where the way you do it in real life will be different from how it's best conveyed, say via a Zoom meeting or something. But yeah, there's no doubt it's definitely a challenge. The other challenge is these are students who are from, at least in the form of a university education, where it's a formal regimented structure. To go back to Tony's point. It's different when you're self-motivated and you go on to Coursera or Udemy and take a course to plug in gaps in your knowledge. It's another thing when your entire university has mandated, like you said, credits are there for for attending online classes and all that. The one challenge is these are kids who are sitting from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening attending classes like this, and all of us have Zoom fatigue at work, and we still get some sort of respite. But these guys are just online, and various professors who are at different points of comfort with technology. Someone like me who's fairly comfortable doing stuff online and optimize their delivery for online, I'd like to guess maybe there are some professors who aren't comfortable doing this. In fact, the university I taught at or I teach at Flame, they've actually been very supportive of this whole thing. I remember last year at around this time was when shit really started going down. Actually, not right now. About in end March was when things really started going bad. Last year, we had a sense that this was going to get really out of hand. They locked down the university just towards the end of that particular batch, and actually they pivoted online pretty quickly and pretty well. They had online training for everybody, all the faculty that is, and they even kept the university open in case anybody wanted to come to one of the classrooms and do shoots. So there were no students, obviously. Students were all told to bugger off back home, but they kept the university open in case they needed recording facilities, which I thought was kind of interesting. And the whole thing has posed so many questions, right? Like how much of in-class is actually needed. Micah, for instance, the place where I studied, their approach is now, and I don't know whether this is going to sustain post things going back to some sense of normalcy, is now they do a half an hour pre-recorded lecture or 1 hour pre-recorded lecture, and then the class time is used only for discussion. It's a model that's been thrown around a lot, and it's existed to some point even before the pandemic struck. And in many ways, that could be the future, where either in your hostel rooms or at home or something, you have a lecture period, say a semester or a few weeks of just going through content, and then you come to class to actually clarify, use discussions. That way, I guess education, at least the subjective parts of education like business or something like that, maybe not the sciences or math, I think that might actually be I think that might be a positive thing that comes out of the whole thing.
Yeah. And this is now sort of quite dramatically different from the way education.
100%. Yeah.
And so obviously there are going to be, people who got it right and people who got it wrong. And in this period of flux, nobody knows who that is.
Yeah.
Just to add from a teacher's perspective, look, it's beyond a point if you've done more than 4 lectures, irrespective of whether you're there physically or online, there will be about, let's say, 20% max of the class that's paying attention despite your best efforts, right?
Yeah.
The one advantage of online is that now you don't see the 30% that is switched off. So while in some senses a physical it's a performance. At the end of the day, teaching is performance, right? So it allows you some cues, but there is not much that you can do. And I think the basic thing is to just trust that the people who are listening are going to listen and then proceed with it. Because, this online window doesn't give you any kind of interaction that is sustainable, right? It's just going to be extremely draining for both you and the listener.
But then again, I feel it's also sorry to cut in, but I feel I have a slight counterpoint over there to building on what Chuck said was there are ways you can bake in interactivity and a feedback mechanism in the system, which does not require you to like just say camera on and ask people to like type in the chat and stuff. But also like, I mean, we're just scratching the surface of this and trying to figure it out. But and that requires maybe a platform innovation further as well. But using stuff like reaction. So I mean, the session that I took recently, where I was like, there are these points that are coming across, so maybe use these reactions and like say using a certain thing to kind of add a point over there. And as we were doing these sessions, and in fact beyond even the sessions, we were doing virtual workshops with the clients and stuff, where we had an international trainer who was coming in who's experienced in doing online workshops, and they said to maintain the level of interactivity, we need the video on is not required, but when you agree with a point, when you're saying something, there were special icons you could use. And when you saw those when you were presenting, so I was presenting a concept, and in that workshop, after having trained that, I was constantly seeing someone like clapping their hands, someone saying that, okay, it's an insightful thought. It feels a little frivolous and non-natural at this point. But I think there is an ability to bake interactivity into this. It's just a medium issue, and the medium needs to evolve to it. So, but I think interactivity can come there.
Yeah, so my point was slightly different, right? So the one thing that we don't do well in India is treat adults as adults, right? So if you were to like tease out this education module into two, one is to say school and the rest is adult learning. And then you say, okay, as an adult, it is, the onus is on you, right? I'm going to obviously be, as a facilitator or a teacher, going to teach to the best of my ability, but the onus is really on you to make that interaction or ask a question, etc. And I'm going to treat you with the respect of an adult. Like if this is not of interest to you, fine. Like there are several courses that I've attended that I have not been interested in, right? Like the one thing that I learned out of 4 years of metallurgical engineering is cryptic crosswords, to be honest. So,
and congratulations on solving one yesterday.
Yeah. So I think that difference is important, which brings me to actually like the one, angle that I can bring in that is missing here is, as a parent of a 5-year-old, right? I've seen how that learning has been, and it's like heartbreaking, right? Because to be honest, school education has very little to do with what is taught beyond, reading, writing, arithmetic. It's all about social interaction and facilitating a place where you can play and pick up social cues and improve yourself, right? Like I don't know if you remember in I think 8th to 10th standard, we learned basically where minerals and ores are present in India, and we had to draw it out on a India map and stuff like that. Like none of that ever added any value, but the real value there was obviously making friends, spending time in an environment which is safe, but also helps you learn from peers, and obviously realizing that there is a world outside where, how your parents treat you versus how your peers treat you, etc. So that part is really heartbreaking for both kids and teachers, because if you're teaching kindergarten, you can't take the same approach that I said, right? You can't treat the other person as an adult. You have to make sure that they're learning, they're writing their A to Z properly, etc. So that's a very different world.
Yeah, and the same thing that you said, Tony, for kindergarten, obviously it's more important at a formative age like that. The same thing applies to some extent for higher education as well, right? Looking back at, you ask anyone who's an MBA, and I guess that's all four of us over here. If we say what the value out of those 2 years at B school was, it's really not about the classes that we attended, but really the grown-up version of what you had mentioned right now.
Absolutely.
The networks, figuring ourselves out.
There are two axes of education. So one is where you learn techniques, right? So that's very clear and defined, and that the teacher is teaching the students those techniques. And some of them are simple, some of them are complicated, but there are techniques, and that's one way. And the second is where it is completely interactive, because the teacher also doesn't know everything. Teacher is more like a mentor, and the the gain, the learning from the class is as much, or to a great extent, a function of the interaction, quality of the interaction, as it is of the instruction.
Yeah, fair.
So do you think that online detracts, or sort of, is it better, equal, or worse than a physical class?
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure about this. So and I'll just answer this and have a rejoinder to what Tony said a while back. There's this beautiful image, beautiful or sad, depending on your point of view, image that I saw recently. I forgot who posted this. I think Karthik, I think Beast of Troll, or somebody on Twitter. My daughter, who is around the same, my daughter as in like that person was saying, not my daughter, who is, I guess, around the same age as Tony's daughter, Emma, right now. She drew her friends and the friends playing and chatting. And it was basically a Zoom window. And because she's grown up over the last year forming relationships like how we are chatting right now. And to us, maybe that seems damn sad. Like, oh, these kids aren't like thinking of, friendship as being in a playground or something. But her daughter didn't feel anything different. Their daughter didn't feel anything different. They're like, this is what friendship is right now. So maybe that is one thing. And I don't know whether that's a sad thing, happy thing, maybe just evolution or something that
was this post on LinkedIn?
I don't know. I really don't.
Dude, I mean, listen, like if you put 35-year-olds in a Zoom window, there aren't very many friendships that are being formed. Right? Let's be honest. I mean, I've seen how my daughter interacts. So like, I mean, I don't know if it works for other parents, great. But I mean, if there are parents listening to this, just don't put any pressure on yourselves or your kids. I actually got a report card for my daughter the other day, and I'm like, why? What is this report card nonsense, right? Like, I mean, they surviving this is like massive in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think like they're honestly, from my experience, from what I've seen of let's say 10 months of sitting in class with my daughter every day, seeing how other kids interact, there is no chance of like forming friendships.
So you're very clear on that, that this, forming friendships or finding new forms of, online friendship or all that. It's, wow, that sounds sidey by itself. So let's ignore I even said.
Yeah, but that's actually an interesting sidebar there, Tony, because
I defer to your judgment, by the way, completely. I defer to your judgment completely. I'm just saying theory. You are sitting there with
he's the only
mine is also
father
like
of young
one
child.
personal experience, and I mean, I am not going to be like model parent for any teachers.
Right? I'm not just asking about your daughter, but in that age group or slightly older age groups, are you seeing them having like non-school directed play, say play dates or just catch ups on like using online platforms? Is that at all prevalent according to you?
Yeah. So in the first wave, we had like basically like bio bubbles with play dates, right? So like you would have like a trusted set of 2 or 3 parents or kids, and we'd like send them over and stuff like that. And
physically.
Yeah, physically. So, but at the end of it, they are like, I don't want them to go. When do I see them again? And then the next 6 days of conversation is about them, right? And rightly so, because like at that age, learning is not important at all. It's just about like interacting with the world and like, pushing buttons, seeing how things work, and like.
So that's it's an extremely poor or not at all a substitute.
Absolutely not.
What you're saying. No matter 100%. How evolved these mediums get and all that. No, that's a fair point. And I think
unless like you're one of those parents who are okay with homeschooling their children, I think that is also a model that is present. But I mean, I am not one for that, right? Because I very, very strongly believe I used to be like a proper shy, introverted person, and it took me a long time to come out of it. And it wouldn't have happened if there weren't like,
if it weren't for, makes sense.
Yeah.
And wait, so much so that like what you don't see for introverts or people like me especially is the social anxiety. Like if the first time I walked into a restaurant, I couldn't just like place an order with the waiter or attract his attention or something as basic as that, right? So these things happen only with the social aspect of things, which can never come through online.
Yeah. So one of the things about social dynamics. So humans are basically social animals, and there is a hypothesis. It's still I guess it's impossible to prove, but the hypothesis is that our brains grew not because not because we wanted to get better at hunting or finding food or whatever. It was because social dynamics were very important. So so being in a tribe and interacting with the other members of the tribe is a very important survival skill for all of humans, and for that you need to be in a group. So one of the things that I remember when I was in school is it's comparative. So you are in a difficult class and it's boring or everything is going above your head, and a quick glance around you and you see most of your guys are in the same boat. You don't panic. You only panic when you are the only guy who's not understanding a word. So on a Zoom screen, that's not going to happen.
And the social assurance on the day of the exam, where you tell each other, "Oh, I haven't studied. I haven't studied."
Goodness, it will just I can't imagine how it is virtually right now for an exam. That's something that I have not been through, and that's another thing that you need to think through. Since somebody had asked how different is it teaching online, this is also the evaluation parameters, like how do you conduct exams now online. Like the university I teach at, they're encouraging teachers, rather than to think exam, they are actually asking them to as far as possible to try and do the evaluation via group assignments and even individual assignments, rather than force students to do a 3-hour thing. Also, I mean, in some sessions, some subjects rather, you need students to not cheat, right? Like for something subjective like marketing, sure, you go ahead, do UC and get inspired from whatever you want. But for something else, factually, how do you stop them from opening up a Chrome window or something? And Naren, what you were saying, right, about social interaction, I guess this just adds on to Tony's point. I'm just going to use the other analogy of the live streamed concerts that I attend as well. To me, the most memorable shows that I've attended aren't necessarily the ones that were musically the best, but the one where there were a chat window. So there's something beautiful about reacting to a song along with thousands of fans from around the world saying, "Oh, this is my favorite part, it's coming up right now." Otherwise, you're essentially just watching a YouTube video for which you're paid a lot of money for. The real joy really comes in fans from around the world. Hey, from Bombay here. Hey, from Czech Republic here.
That's the whole concert experience.
Yeah, that's the whole. Yeah, in some sense, that was recreating. I mean, some part at least of the concert experience online. Not that it can ever be recreated. And to some extent, I guess it goes back to what Shrikesh says. It's a matter of the medium catching up in some ways. I feel, for instance, like Zoom is a great tool at what it does, but it's not optimized for any one thing in particular. I did see at CES earlier this year, I forget which the platform was, but some startup was working on basically Zoom for teachers with more features that were specific for a classroom, apart like Blackboard mode and some advanced forms of polling and assignments. I mean, Zoom's, like if you see all the language around Zoom, even if you're taking a class, it is still record this meeting, or it's all still aimed towards corporate discussions. So it's not really optimized for anything, right? I feel like each of these platforms or new platforms will need to evolve that. I mean, it's not going to bridge.
No, there is Google Classroom.
There is Google Classroom, yeah, but obviously none of these are going to solve the other larger problems that you spoke about, Tony. Obviously, be it at a school level or be it at a say a B school level. Like I know people who are regretting joining B school during this year, saying that we are still paying, or more or less still paying the same fees. It's different, I guess, when you are deliberately doing an online course for distance learning at a reduced fee, so that you get that. You're in it for the certification, and that's it. You're really not bothered about social interaction or whatever.
Yeah. If you want to learn techniques, that is perfect.
That's best.
That's actually really interesting. That's really interesting you mentioned that, Chuck, because I mean, I always, so I went to Symbiosis SIMC for my MBA, and my lifelong fight was always whenever I used to mention Symbiosis and someone used to say distance learning, and I'm like, no, we're not distance learning. So the whole distance learning, there's that taboo against distance learning, and I almost wonder, when whether almost like the batches of B school students. I mean, B school is all about like what you go for is you don't pay for the education in the classroom, but you pay for what is that networking or whatever that network is that you have over there. So, I mean, I'm almost like, are these guys like going to be referred to as the pandemic batches? And they are like the distance learning equivalent people who are like, who didn't have the networking opportunities, who didn't have the opportunities to actually like, I mean, even with a guest lecturer for that matter, like a lot of, I mean, internship opportunities, project opportunities used to happen when you finished your guest lecture and you're walking with the guest lecturer, having lunch with the guest lecturer. And then that's where you actually kind of came up with something and they talk about their work and there's a project opportunity there. And that's where I feel there's a whole, that whole aspect and what you were talking about, Tony, the social and the educational opportunities that are, so to say, is fortuitous or circumstantial, right? Which you encounter when you are you either chance upon it or you are unwillingly forced into it. Not forced, but you circumstantially got ended up over there, and suddenly you discovered something that was really good or learned something that you really wanted to.
Yeah. So ironic, right? So while it's easier to get guest lecturers, the ability to do this happenstance sort of thing is less.
Exactly.
That's kind of interesting. The other problem I'm not sure if this is a problem per se, but now since learning can happen from anywhere. If I had the resources, I could learn at, say, Harvard or NYU Stern right now. So does this mean now, because of the pandemic, all geographical borders are broken down, etc.? Does this mean that there are going to be few superstar schools or professors, etc., and the whole middle class of universities are completely wiped out? Because technically a Harvard, if it does not want to necessarily be as exclusive anymore, right? I understand, like, there is always a physical limitation that our classroom can have only 200 students, and then there is the brand-based limitation as well, right? We don't want to expand from 200 to 300,000 because that will dilute what our brand stands for. And there have been some outspoken critics of this whole model, including our hero Scott Galloway. So it might be interesting to see what happens. Do people just gravitate towards the few places, for instance, that are big brands, and you have this entire middle class of universities that are just scooped out completely? And this is true for universities, for lecturers. I think somebody else, I think Naval or someone said, you just need to be the world's best at something. And now, because of the opportunities of the internet and in some ways the pandemic-based learning and all that, you will be invited everywhere. So, I keep thinking about things.
Yeah, I mean, I can
in the current...
Sorry, just to complete on Chuck's point, it's almost like, imagine a future where there is like a marketplace for teachers.
Yeah. I'm thinking Chris Gayle. Chris Gayle is a professional T20 player, no matter which league pays for him, right? He's played with RCB, he's played with somebody in Pakistan, somebody in Bangladesh, some obviously West Indies.
You pay me, I come hit.
Yeah, correct. That's all.
So that's what. So that's marketplace. Sorry, Tony, you were saying.
No, I was saying in the current dynamics, I actually think there is an imperative to reduce batch sizes. So previously, if you could teach a class of 60, the optimal class size right now, I would say, is 10.
Very interesting.
Then you can actually, better that quality education. But
that's interesting.
Then it becomes the constraint becomes the teacher's availability, right? Because if you now have to teach 60 students, you have to be available across 6 hours as opposed to 1 hour. So that's one aspect. But I think where definitely there is an advantage for all of these new B schools is that now placements can happen online, right? So you don't have to physically. So I studied in IIM Kozhikode. One of the initial challenges that campus faced was that there were very few direct flights from major corporate cities, Bombay, Delhi, etc. Right, so it would be like a 3-day effort for a company to come and do placements there. Yeah. But now there are I don't know, so many 30 IIMs. I don't know what the number is, but basically you can do it all online, right? Yeah. So the placement part becomes much easier, I think.
We're all talking about subjects that still can be delivered online. Like thinking like how mechanical engineering would be taught online. I mean, I know you're joking, but I have fond
your salt.
My salt tasting. Please refer previous episode for that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering how.
That on Zoom.
Yeah, like I'm wondering how the last year batches that are very reliant on going to laboratories and all that have been operating.
Laboratories, even like theater, physical education.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
See,
the physical education, I guess, to some extent, you still can do. You can have an imaginative enough coach that just like how I'm doing online training with an instructor on Cult. I can imagine that happening. But when you actually need equipment, not everybody has a lathe at home, right? I'm guessing. Naren, please correct me if I'm if I'm wrong. Around
but
July.
That said, even before. So I have been hiring mechanical engineers for 3 decades now. Even before the lockdown, I have seen the practical aspect of engineering declining dramatically, but people really able to pick it up very quickly on the job. So like they don't know. For typical thing is you have a vernier caliper and you have to measure something. There's a way to hold a vernier caliper. If you don't hold it right, your measurements are not reliable. And almost every engineering graduate, okay, he would know differential equations, but he wouldn't know how to hold a vernier. But he would take precisely 10 minutes of instruction to know how to
know. So
it's not that much of so if you know the principles, some of the of the practical aspects are easily taught. It's not that expensive. So I would extend that for labs as well. If you know, for example, that reaction A proceeds in a particular way and these are the dynamics and kinetics of it, physically doing it is just a confirmation.
Yeah, fair enough. During the lockdown last year, around June, July or so, I actually was researching for an article I was writing called "Is it possible to teach design online?" And obviously, some aspects of design can be taught online, like say graphic design, for instance. But others where you need to be physically in the lab, you play with clay and all that. Industrial design, for instance. And I remember speaking to a couple of faculty, one from NID, one from Flame University, another one from IIT's IDC. And they are all finding it very difficult because the thing is they need to be in the labs in order to learn itself and make those mistakes, look at objects physically. Yes, there's still you can do AutoCAD and all that for some part of it, but other than that, it's very difficult. Some professors have tried to be imaginative. Like for example, one professor I spoke to who teaches material science or something of that sort. They obviously can't come to the lab to play with all the materials that are over there. So she just turned the whole thing around and said, okay, find materials from around your house. Because when you say substances from around your house to a bunch of teenagers, that could be something else. Find materials from around your house and like play with those. So she turned the curriculum around a little bit, but it's hard to imagine that happens. Like
that's sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, and less imaginative professors wouldn't come up with something like that. So,
are you working towards if you can't go to Mica, get Mica?
Get Mica.
Amazing. But speaking, as the only humanities graduate in this August group, from the humanities point of view, obviously you can teach literature and all those other aspects of humanities on Zoom. But I remember in my course we had a section on phonetics, and for that actually there was one part where our phonetics professor, who was like he was a phonetics expert, would come and observe how we are rolling our tongue and the shape we are using with our mouth to actually say the particular phrase.
Fanatic. Holding that inside. I was holding that.
Yeah, so there was that level of instruction. Then we also had like something what was called theater classes, where we had playback theater and proscenium theater and a lot of theater classes and stuff like that. So in all of those elements, like I was just reading up on how I was reading not in India, but in the US and stuff, about how theater teachers are like literally losing their jobs and they are switching professions entirely because nobody can learn theater online as such. And which is where I feel that for a lot of these, and the thing is also, nobody's in a world where we need to train as many doctors as we can and we need to train all these other people. If theater is suffering, nobody's really concerned right now. They're like, fine, we can manage without it. But what you're losing is a solid, I mean, if this continues for another year, a solid 2 to even 3 years of grassroots. So there will be an entire batch or 2 to 3 years of students who have pretty much entirely abandoned their roots on theater. And in fact, that even extends to not just theater, but I was interviewing some, for another research that I was doing, I was interviewing some kids, school kids from in Malaysia, and a lot of them were talking about how they are transitioning from, they were kids, so taekwondo is very popular in Malaysia for kids to do, and there's a huge this thing of kids abandoning taekwondo and switching to piano, or switching to like stuff that can be taught through, switching to playing an instrument or doing something that can be taught through Zoom. So there's a huge taekwondo over the past 3 years, so there's a huge bunch of taekwondo instructors who are out of work. Right. And like a lot of these different which require physical instruction suddenly has gone entirely out, and like which a lot of a lot of students who would normally take up these with like their friends and stuff are entirely abandoning this. So we might even observe a few years from now like how there will be like this lost generation of kids who had never took up any of these things, and some of these streams might even die out because of it.
Yeah. But to add to your point of like the theater thing, while there might be people who there might be less theater classes, there might be it might lead to new things. Like I can imagine people doing courses for, say, how to create a musical on TikTok, which is
absolutely
now not just a thing, but something that society itself has accepted. So it might. I mean, I'm pretty sure it sounds ludicrous to us right now, but the thought of theater education would have been ludicrous maybe 200 years or so back. So as with everything, I guess this is inconclusive, and there are many ways in which
it's all subjective.
It's all subjective. Cool.
I just want to say we used to be social animals before. Now we've become social plants. So
social plants. Nice. I thought you were going to go like anti-social animals or social media animals, but I didn't think you would play on animals. That's interesting. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. No, we are social animals who live in a zoo, (M).
Oh.
Wow.
Zoomology. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Have you bought any? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have reached the logical end.
Yeah.
So what have we learned from this? I always like to do a wrap up.
Summarize.
Yeah. No way. So going back to our theme of going back to the previous episode, on the thing about cookies, I sort of said about federated learning of co-hosts. I still think like there is a new medium to be explored where there are fewer students as opposed to the
I really like that observation, because till now I've always been thinking that the online thing means that you're going to go from 100 students to 100,000 students. This is actually quite an interesting point to go the other way, and it actually might mean that it becomes just more bespoke. Maybe there is an option. Maybe the middle class over here also gets hollowed out. Maybe there won't be 100 class anymore. It'll either be 10,000 or it'll be 10.
The big challenge here is not the technique teaching part. It's the the interaction. How to get something approaching classroom level of interaction on Zoom is a problem that still needs to be solved in a big way.
Yes, wonderful. And that we have more or less covered everything, and I will send the final exam across to all our listeners. Please fill it out and send it to examdepartment@simplified.py. And so thank you once again, everyone, for listening. This has been a fascinating discussion. I think we should do more of these unscripted, completely. It just felt like a Zoom call.
I learned a hell of a lot. I mean, sort of clarified a lot of
more importantly, we didn't have to prepare anything.
We didn't have to prepare.
We never do. Actually, yeah.
All right.
Basically, solve the problem of online learning by just doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly, and let that be an inspiration for everybody out there, except any of my students. If you happen to be listening, please go back and finish your assignments. Okay, so Naren, shall we sign off as always?
Yes. So stay safe, stay zoomed, and
not always with a little asterisk over there, especially if you are studying in school, then don't stay only on Zoom.
Zoom out from time to
Zoom
time
out
and look at the bigger picture.
Stay zoomed and zoomed out. Wow, stay zoomed and zoomed out. Beautiful.
Yeah, stop and smell the flowers. Unless someone has coughed on them.
Yeah, or unless the flowers are actually a slightly illegal variety. Actually, in which case, smell them even more. You will learn a lot more that way. Or also, I am told. All academic.
Best place for advice.
Yeah.
Best place for it. The true flora. That's the plants of social. I think we should stop now. Bye.
Yeah, we've gone past the logical end now.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you guys next week. And yeah.
Bye.
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 I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, thewholetruthfoods.com, PayPal, and Seat Tires. We really do appreciate the support. So the last year's been tough for all of us, and the second wave of COVID really hit us badly. To help those affected by the pandemic in India, the podcasting community has come together under the Pod for Change banner to raise funds through an exclusive NGO partner, Give India. Join IVM and Pod for Change as we look to make a positive impact in the life of those affected by COVID-19. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and remember, somebody could really use the help. And now back to the promo. On the Simplified podcast, the gang explains the oxygen crisis happening in the country and tells us the various measures being taken to tackle it. On States of Anarchy, Hamsani Hariharan talks about how the geopolitical relationships shaped COVID response and the world order. As Indians, we're all familiar with acid reflux or heartburn, given the spicy food we consume. On The Habit Coach, Ashton has some simple solutions to counter that. Vatsama Moria explores the iconic neighborhood of Dadar and tells us its connection to outer space in Postcards from Nowhere. It was Dangle time on The Fighting Goat, as hosts Somesh and Arjun were joined by unbeaten MMA fighter and Commonwealth gold medalist Ritu Fogart. The traveling professor Siddharth Deshmukh shares examples of various innovations that came up during the COVID times and helped us deal with the situation. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Do you know Tamil? Tamil Puriyuma? Do your children enjoy great stories that inculcate good values? Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran and I host the Storytime Tamil podcast. I am excited to share a short story with great moral values every day. Listen to Storytime Tamil on the IVM podcast app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from.